Good evening. Welcome to Safford City Council meeting, May 8th. I think we got a quorum. Pledge of Allegiance is going to be offered by Vice Mayor Rich Ortega, following the invitation by Councilman Luke Arbizo. Would you stand and remain standing for both, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we humbly bow our heads and thank Thee for this wonderful opportunity that we have as a government to discuss the issues of the city and be able to come together and make Safford great. Heavenly Father, we ask Thee for a special blessing over the mayor and his family, and let them know that we love and care for them. Heavenly Father, we ask Thee to be with our citizens and our employees of the city, that they may be able to understand that we are here for them and care for them and trying our hardest for them. Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for all that You give us to be a great country and community. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and thank you, Councilman. Citizen comments on agenda items. What I like to do is I like to have the agenda items talk during that, right before that item. And if any of you that have filled out an agenda item want to speak ahead of time, like right now, then I'll open that opportunity up. But if you'd like to hold off until that time, that's what I prefer to do. Is that okay? That brings us to citizen comments on non-agenda items. Do we have any non-agenda? Okay. So that brings us to a public hearing. Item 7.1, which is the bingo application. Mr. Hoschel? Did I miss something? The public hearing first, right? John, did I miss something?
Yeah, there's a public hearing.
Okay, we need to do the public hearing first.
Yes.
Okay, the public hearing in compliance with Arizona Revised Statutes 55-404, 5409, and 5410 to hear the public comments regarding. So go ahead with that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a public hearing in accordance with Section 38-43.01. It is given that the Mayor and Council of the City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona will hold a public hearing relating to bingo license recommendation to the State Department of Revenue regarding a new bingo license application submitted by Thomas Sanders on behalf of Outreach Arizona, located at the Copper Steer Steakhouse. All members of the public are invited to attend the hearing. So this will be for the first one at Outreach Arizona.
You have anybody that from the public like to hear or like to speak? We good to go on then?
All right. And then this next one will be another public hearing relating to the bingo license recommendation to the State Department of Revenue regarding a new bingo license application submitted by Elaine Beckett on behalf of the Graham County Senior Center.
Do we have anybody like to speak on that one? Give it just a little bit longer. I promised Vice Mayor I'd go slow.
You're doing a good job.
I listened to you. All right, go ahead, Matt.
Would you like to close the public hearing?
I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and reconvene into item 9.1.
So the City of Safford is seeking direction from Council on whether to approve or disapprove the Outreach Arizona Incorporated Class B bingo application. The City of Safford received an Arizona Department of Revenue application for bingo license packet, along with the required paperwork for submission from Outreach Arizona Incorporated. As per Arizona Revised Statute 5-401 through 5-415, the local governing body shall upon receipt of the application immediately set a hearing on the application to be held within 45 days, which we just had. Following the receipt of the application and the hearing, the local governing body shall recommend approval or disapproval of the application and forward the original or a certified copy of the application endorsed with its approval or disapproval to the licensing authority, the Arizona Department of Revenue bingo section. If the application is disapproved by the local governing body, the endorsement shall contain the specific reasons for disapproval. As per the application, Outreach Arizona Incorporated will hold bingo on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. as per the application dated April 5th, 2023. And attached, you will see the application for the bingo license packet, as well as the lease agreement to use the facility at the Copper Steer Steakhouse.
You know, I had just a couple questions on it. Now, it's strictly for a bingo permit or license, right?
Mayor, Vice Mayor Ortega, this is strictly for a bingo license as it is stated in the Arizona Revised Statutes. And what that means is for simple card bingo where you have a caller who calls numbers and then they mark.
And how about, don't they have video bingo too? Would that,
So from what I read and understand, based on the statute, how the bingo is to be played is very specific. The equipment that they lay out in the state statute is very specific as well. It does allude, or it does specify that there can be electronic devices that are used to aid, but it's not strictly played on an electronic device.
and now, and
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, this is Bill Sims. Could I jump in?
Absolutely. Yes, go ahead, Bill.
oh man, not again.
Bill, we can't hear you. I think you were muted, Bill.
I know, I don't know why he keeps doing that.
Do you think he was headed to what the difference is between the A and B?
No, we can't hear you, so I'm gonna put you on speaker.
I can specify what the difference is between a Class A and a Class B, if you would like,
All right,
Councilman
go ahead.
Lopez.
See if we can hear him now.
Let's hear what our attorney has to say.
Yeah,
first.
you cut off. I could hear you guys, but what I was trying to say is the staff person was correct. The statute was amended to allow electronic devices solely to assist persons primarily with disabilities to be able to, in effect, use an electronic device to replace the bingo card. It cannot be used to facilitate gaming in other locations. It can simply be used as a replacement for the card and nothing more. It does not allow bingo to have an electronic gaming device.
So in other words, eventually, that wouldn't be the first step for bringing in slot machines, for instance.
It would not, no.
Okay.
Did that help?
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions under the bingo applications, item 9.1?
I didn't know if that was the answer because one applicant is A and another one is B. What are the differences?
Okay, Mr. Hochschild?
Mayor, Councilman Lopez, a Class A license, the stipulation under that is that the amount of gross receipts that they can collect within a year is limited to $75,000, whereas the Class B, their gross receipts are limited to $500,000 in a year. And then a Class C is anything over $500,000 has to be reported.
Thank you, Mayor.
That answer your question, Councilman Lopez?
It's answered it, Mayor. Thank you.
Anybody
I
else?
don't know what to tell you, Bill. I don't know how.
I move that we approve class. B, bingo license for Outreach Arizona Inc.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the bingo applications for, you said, license A? Or
Class B,
Class
bingo
B.
license for Outreach Arizona.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the bingo application license for Class B bingo license in Safford, Arizona. Any more discussion?
I don't know if the gentleman, he's done.
I'm sorry, thank you. I do have two applicants that want to speak. You guys want to speak on the bingo application license? Thomas Sanders?
I'll wait a minute.
Okay,
They said only if we.
They only wanted to speak if we needed, but they filled out the paper, but they actually.
okay. All right. Any more discussion?
No, sir.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes.
Mayor, may I be excused from this next item? I have a conflict, and I'm also the president of SECA, so I'm going to step away from the diocese, so I don't get blamed for having an influence.
Okay. So Councilman Mike Anzola has stepped off the diocese for item 9.2. So that brings us to item 9.2, bingo applications. Mr. Holschel?
Mayor and members of council, this is a City of Safford is seeking direction from council on whether to approve or disapprove the Graham County Senior Center Class A bingo license or application. We received an Arizona Department of Revenue application for bingo license, along with the required paperwork for submission from the Graham County Senior Center. As per Arizona Revised Statute 5-401 through 5-415, the local governing body shall, upon receipt of the application, immediately set a hearing on the application to be held within 45 days. The hearing was set and was held prior to these items. Following the receipt of the application and the hearing, the local governing body shall recommend approval or disapproval of the application and forward the original or certified copy of the application endorsed with its approval or disapproval to the licensing authority, the ADOR bingo section. If the application is disapproved by the local governing body, the endorsement shall contain the specified reasons for disapproval. As per the application, the Graham County Senior Center will hold bingo on Thursdays at 12:30 p.m. And attached, you will also see the application.
I'll move we approve the Class A bingo license submitted by the Graham County Senior Center.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the applications for bingo, Class A bingo license, Safford, Arizona, for the Graham County Senior Citizen. Any discussion? Entertain a motion, or entertain a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Elaine and Thomas, did you want to speak on this now, or you guys good? Okay.
This lady.
Elaine? Yes, come on up. I'm sorry, I hope I didn't take the vote too fast.
That's okay.
Okay.
I didn't want to speak at first, but I just wanted to say thank you.
All right.
And our seniors will look forward to this. Prior to COVID, I'm the new activities coordinator. I was stepping in big shoes of John Smallwood. And our senior citizens are looking forward to bingo. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Elaine, appreciate it. All right, we're going to go on to item 9.3, the minutes. Everybody have a chance to look over the minutes?
Mayor, I make the motion, we approve the minutes.
Councilman Mike Anazola is back on the dietis, and he's made a motion to approve item 9.1, the minutes, as we have in front of us.
Second.
Bill, was you trying to chime in? No? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay. That's going to bring us to item 9.4, chamber contract renewal. I know I have a lot of agenda item requests for this item. Would you like to?
Should I read part of it in, or do you want to just?
You want to read it in?
Well, at least open the item.
Okay. Yeah, John. I'm sorry. Go right on ahead. I've seen if they wanted to talk on it, but go ahead. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. As staff is seeking council approval of the Graham County Chamber of Commerce contract with the City of Safford. The contract will run from July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2028. Background essentially is that the city has a 5-year contract that is coming to an end this fiscal year. So the contract in front of you would extend that contract for another 5 years. The analysis simply pointed out that the pre-existing budget for the chamber was $130,000 during that 5-year period. $20,000 of that was included in that $30,000 had to do with very specific requirements for that contract. Those requirements are no longer a part of this contract. As presented to council, the new agreement would provide a fixed monthly allotment of $15,000 a month. Again, we had several conversations around the limitations in state statute regarding revenues and the discussion of those revenues when there's a limited number of vendors in town. So this contract, rather than doing a percentage, ties the amount per month, and that is $15,000 or $180,000. And the contract is attached. Staff recommended approval.
Okay. So we're now going to, so the request, you guys, who's filled these out? If I go ahead and call on you, you want to come up and speak? I need to point out that to Mr. Brown and Mr. Lopez, you guys did turn your packets in late, and by our deal, we're not supposed to accept them, but I kind of sometimes oversee the rules a little bit, and therefore I'm going to go ahead and allow them to be ready. And I do believe we have a time clock on those, correct, V? So, Mr. Lopez, we'll start with you. If you want to come up to the mic and share your, I do want to state this, that I know that you guys had
has joined the conference.
I know that you guys have heard from the dietist that that you heard Arnold and myself, Councilman Lopez and myself, get into a disagreement, but I thought it was a very manly disagreement that we shared, and it was on the air. It was on the news ran for a couple, 3 days, and as I had to sit there and reflect on all that, I just want Councilman Lopez to know that the way that I treated you was unfairly, coming from a 50-year-old mayor. That shouldn't have happened. And I want you to know that I truly appreciate your service to the community, and I apologize for my lack of character and the offense that I've given you. So therefore, I'm saying that to say this, that you guys, as we speak, let's speak open, let's speak clearly, and let's try to refrain from, I guess I could say, calling out and going that direction. Let's try to be fairly friendly if we can, please.
All right. Hello, Mayor, City Council, and City Manager John. My name is Edmund Lopez, and I'm a citizen of Safford. I want you to know that I volunteer at the Graham County Chamber 3 days a week, and what I've seen is very impressive. I was a member of the Chamber about 5 years ago, and from what happened then to what's happening now, I'm impressed. They're doing something. You can see that they're doing something for the what do you call it, the community, the businesses and all. I see a lot of nonprofit groups coming in and asking for help from the chamber employees for their events and also suggestions on how to run an event. I also see a lot of visitors coming in and wanting to know what to do in this town. The chamber employees take care of these people with the utmost respect and knowledge on what to do in this area. These are people from all over the United States and the world that are utilizing our restaurants and our hotels. So they're spending money here in Safford. I've also seen a councilman come in to see what the chamber has on the city of Safford. He was very disappointed when there was not a lot of literature. The chamber does have a couple of items on the city, but then again, this is where you, the representatives of the city of Safford, can assist the chamber to get these brochures out. This will help out the chamber, but again, it costs money, and without a constructive budget, it's hard. The extra funding would be utilized effectively in the chamber right now. They have copies of what to do in the city, but it's in black and white. They don't even have a copy machine that makes colored copies. You have 4 of the most nicest, smart, effective employees at the chamber that I've seen living here in Safford for over 27 years. Anyway, thank you so much for the opportunity to say.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Mr. Brown? I'm sorry, Ben, would you state your name and your address? I'm supposed to have that read in there. My apologies.
Absolutely. Good evening. My name is Ben Brown, citizen of Safford. My address is 2422 South First Avenue. Where do I start? The chamber has been so instrumental for a new business. I've relied on Vance. He's turned around and helped us out in return by spreading the word. The chamber is definitely instrumental in helping a new business get to that next level and really, I don't know if you've had a chance to see us and our growth and what we've been able to do, but definitely a lot of it has been using the avenues of the chamber and other local communities, but definitely relying on Vance and his team to get us there through which grants are available. He's been able to tell us little things that have helped our business. I should say he's a really big proponent and has helped our business grow. And I don't even know where I should start. My first 100-person catering dinner for the chamber dinner was through the chamber. So just thank you, and I'm here to support. If there's anything I can do to support the chamber, please let me know.
Mr. Brown, thank you. And council, because it's an agenda item, you can have dialogue with him if you so choose. That brings us to Shalene Preston. Sorry, guys, I have a hard time pronouncing names, so please forgive me. They always call me Coots, and it's Cowles, so.
You actually got it right, so good job. Doesn't happen very often. My name's Shalene Preston. I'm a citizen of Safford. I'm also the Graham County Chamber of Commerce Gila Valley Leadership President. And what I've noticed mostly about the chamber is when I went through the leadership program myself, I saw that a lot of things could be changed and added. Since Vance and his team took over, it is night and day. They build bridges with community members. They really, really try to make this program more substantial than it was before in the past. The chamber inside's different. The staff is different. I can't stress enough how smoothly the events that I help with run, how smoothly Graham County or the chamber or the Gila Valley leadership runs under their direction. So I think this is the money that they have asked for would be really super helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeannie Howard, when you come up, would you tell us your address of your business, please?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I live in Thatcher, 2740 West Mockingbird Loop. I also own Genevieve's Marketplace at 401 West Main and the Tiny Bean Coffee Company at 115 US Highway 70. I've been a member of the Chamber for 10 years since we've opened Genevieve's, and I must say they've come a long way during that time. I want to echo again the response on just the past 5 years alone since Mr. Bryce has taken over. Their mission statement is, we advance the quality of life for everyone in the Gila Valley through connection, leadership, and tourism by recruiting an exemplary, professional, and ethical team. And that goes all the way around. They have the strongest board I have seen. That's very diverse. They're all professionals. They have backgrounds in what they do. And they're strong, and they've come a long way. And they put every effort in that they can to not only promote events and have events, but to bring businesses cohesively together to support each other, not compete against each other. Vance brings new business owners in the store constantly and introduces us, and right then we kick off and start planning things together. And I just can't echo enough, on the other statements that have been made, but just the support that they give us as businesses. Probably 15% of my customers are tourists who come from out of town. Most of them come because the chamber sends them downtown to the businesses. They tell them about the events. And so I just want to, again, thank Vance and the board and the team for all that they do. And I'm very excited for the future, and I just support them 100%. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Richens, Reed Richens, you're up. And then your address, please.
Hi, Mayor and Board. Reed Richens. I live in Thatcher, but I own Double R Communications and Double R Sound, and I've been working with the Chamber for a really long time. I think I figured it out. It was 1992. And I went through D. Jasic, and I went through Murray Freestone, and we went through, all the others. And the Chamber is doing more right now than they've ever done before. And so I know we're talking about funding and just the nuts and bolts of it. I was there when they passed the original bed tax. And the bed tax was supposed to go for tourism and economic development. And so they decided to give half of it to the Chamber. First of all, nobody could ever tell us where the other half went. And nobody in this room could tell us where the other half went to the general fund. But we don't know how it was used as far as going to, tourism or economic development. So when they went with the Chamber, gave them half of it, and we started looking just the nuts and bolts. I'm not going to talk about how much the Chamber's doing. Everybody in this room, you'd be just living under a rock if you haven't seen what the Chamber's done in the last 4 or 5 years. And I've been on the board for that last 4 or 5 years. But just the nuts and bolts of it, employee retention is, as you guys know better than anybody right now, employee retention is the roughest thing in the world right now. It is so hard. And we put together a staff of 4 great employees. And the money that we're asking for, that Mr. Casella presented just now, is just a little bit above the average of half of the bed tax that we've been operating on for the last so many years, minus the COVID years, because there was no bed tax really hardly during the COVID years. And so in looking at that, there's 2 things. Number one, we want to continue with employee retention. We want to keep the guys we have. We want to be able to offer them medical benefits. We just want a budget amount that we can plan with, rather than maybe this month it's $15,000 and maybe this month it's $10,000. Let's just get a budget amount that we can plan with so we can retain our employees. And that's the number one thing that we would like to do as a Chamber board, and that's why we're asking for this. I think it's about, the $15,000 a month is about $3,000 a month more than what the average has been. But in just the simple math of it, everybody who's booked a hotel room in the last 6 months knows that the hotel costs have skyrocketed. I know everybody knows what I'm talking about, and that means that bed tax is going to continue to go up. So honestly, I feel like we're asking for about what we would be getting anyway, because of the cost of hotels. So employee retention is very important. I feel like the Chamber's doing a great job. I feel like Vance has done an incredible job of putting a great staff together. Is that the alarm? The Chamber's done a great job of putting the staff together. We would like to retain them, and this budget that we propose would allow us to do that. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Brings us to Vance Bryce.
Twisted my back sleeping, so I'm moving slow. My name is Vance Bryce. I live at 1017 South 3rd Avenue in Safford, and I'm also the Executive Director for the Graham County Chamber of Commerce. And I just want to say that we're really excited about a conversation 2 weeks ago, and really excited to keep working, get to work, be a little more organized in what we're doing. Excited to work with your staff. Your staff's been great. To work with to vision how we can share resources, how we can do things effectively together with the event staff at the city and the staff at the Chamber, and have just open dialogue, good relationships over there. So we appreciate all you do very much, and we hope we can have a really high quality product for you with this contract. Thank you.
May I answer a question?
Yes.
Mr. Bryce? Sorry about that. I know that there's no contract or anything with the town of Pima and Thatcher, but is there any way in the near future that you could try to work out something with them or to bring them in? This is just a question that I have, and because this is a community event, and I feel that maybe we should bring more people together. You know what I mean? If it's
Yeah, I'm really excited to bring this contract over to them to show them what's possible, to show them what things they can benefit from. I know with the town of Thatcher specifically, we talk about with their new park, some cool events that could happen there, some things that they would like to do over there. And so, yes, short answer is yes. We're going over to Pima.
Have there been any other type of events that I can't recall any that the chamber has done within those areas?
Regular ribbon cuttings and those kind of things, but not
no events.
Supporting the PTO in Pima, but not a
Left
big
the
event.
conference.
Okay, and Vance, I while you're here on talking with us as well, it might be a question for you or for the staff as well. One of the questions that I have is, let's just use our last event that we had, which was the Spring Festival, right? The Wine Festival, like whatever we want to call it. What is it? I'm sorry.
Safford Spring Festival.
Safford Spring Festival. Out of that, does the setting up of the tents and all the help from the city of Safford, does that come out of this budget, or is that something that the city of Safford offers and that we up here decided to fund?
So our events are a little different than the city events. So we set up our own tents and tables and chairs and things. We do rent them from the city, but the rent is waived as part of the special event application. And then the application fee is waived. The hours and overtime for police officers that need to man the beer garden, be security, that's waived. The sanitation folks that bring out the trash cans, there's a whole team, right, that comes out and supports those events. So all those hours, if they're overtime, are waived for us.
So, Mr. Casella, do you have, it's been a little bit, do you have about what the cost is on the Safford Spring Festival, what it cost with your funding from the city, what you have? So you're prepared, you have that ready to go, huh?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I don't have the numbers from this year's Spring Festival, but for last festival, we were a little under $3,000 in material and labor. A total of materials of $1,747 and a total of labor of $296.52 and equipment of $181.12. So that's last year's Spring Fest.
Okay. One more question, Mayor.
Go ahead.
What about Salsa Fest?
Let me pull that one up. I have them on different spreadsheets, just one second. So the Salsa Fest total was $3,352 in 2022.
What's the other one that we have, Vance?
Those are the two we're going forward with. The wedding fair is with the venue on Main Street now. They took that over from us. And we helped the city with Oktoberfest and Harvest Fest and some of those things, but they are your events.
Okay.
And wasn't the Spring Festival and the Salsa Fest a city event prior to the chamber taking it over?
Salsa Fest was
Always
Lions
the
Club.
chamber? Oh, the Lions Club.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that answer it? Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Go ahead.
Mayor, I just wanted to clarify a couple of points on the bed tax. The motel tax, the way it's structured, we keep using this 50% number. And really what we do by law is provide 100% of what we're required for tourism. Our hotel motel tax is 5%. Our base tax is 2.5%. So by law, the difference between our base and what we charge for hotel motel is what we have to make available for tourism. So that's why you keep hearing the 50% number, because it's 2.5% of the 5. So really, that amount that is required for tourism, we spend out at 100%.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions so far? We good to keep going? Okay. Brings Karina. your name and your address, please.
Hello, Mayor and council members. My name is Karina Pino Reyes. I am a Safford resident. I reside at 1802 South Elm Avenue here in Safford. I'd first like to say thank you all for allowing me to come up here and speak today. I am, of course, here in support of the Chamber's contract. We did propose our new contract to you guys last council meeting. And I'd just like to reiterate that as a Safford resident, it's important that I see the leadership from this diocese. I love what you guys have done for the airport. I understand that's a tourism aspect. I love what you guys are doing with our parks. I think that's fantastic. And I think that the money that you're giving to the chamber also supports the community, because the events that we put on not only bring the businesses together, but it's community engagement. It allows the residents of not just the city of Safford, but the Gila Valley to come together and commune, get together, enjoy an afternoon out in the park. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Okay. Karina, you know that I've been a supporter of this, but at the very end, what really, I mean, I don't really quite understand what happened. I've been kind of gone for a week, and all of a sudden we're filled up talking about this agenda. But that night of the presentation, we were presented with the things that the chamber does, which I think they go above and beyond. But then we also got hit, or I kind of got hit with the retention of keeping employees, and I understand how valuable employees are and how we need to do whatever we can to address that issue. And then, we went from 130 to 180 now?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, another 30,000, right? No,
Yeah, it was a 15% increase.
15% increase. And I believe that 15% increase was going towards employee retention.
Sure.
And which brings me to the understanding that I understand what I feel from some of the talk on that night. The council's talk was concerns of where our other entities fall into place. And do I personally, I still support the chamber 100%, but do I personally think it's our responsibility to hold 100% accountable to the city? I would have to question that.
Sure.
And therefore, that's kind of, I guess, that's why we're here today, talking about this and stuff, understanding that I still support that, and I really care what's going on within this city that I call home, and I want to make sure that that the city taxes, the people that are living here are getting what they sought me to oversee as a mayor, and to spend the money very wisely, and also to listen to the council members as well. And so I just had a slight check in my spirit, okay, just a slight. And so that's where we are today, Karina. And I've just been frank, open, and honest. And any of you could have ever called and talked to me personally, and I'd have told you personally how I feel about this. But I want to definitely get out there, and I'm sure I'll get out there through the news, and that's okay. That's why I want to be very respectful of the chamber. I want to be respectful of the council as well, and just say that's where I am today. I'm just a tad bit checking my spirit of the load share. Okay, that's all.
Am I allowed to respond?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Mayor. I appreciate those comments. And I'd like to expand a little bit on that. We really focused on employee retention. And the big reason on that is because without a stable foundation, we cannot continue to be 15% more effective. I mean, we've had so many people speak today about the last 5 years and how productive it was. My job as the chamber president is to make sure the next 5 years are productive.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas it came across like it was paying employee salaries, it's really just giving us the stability we need to make sure we're as successful today in 5 years as we are today.
And go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I don't know if we're sliding over into the discussion part, so maybe this isn't an appropriate time to mention it, but I just do want to make clear that the 180 was the number 2 weeks ago. It hasn't changed from then till now.
That's right.
And that also it was extremely clear at the time that employee retention was one of the main focuses. That's not a new thing, that just, it was bullet point number 1.
Correct.
Of the 4 bullet points. And we were fairly vocal about our support.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I understand minds change. But I just want to make sure that it's not unclear at all that was presented with clarity to us 2 weeks ago.
Thank you, Councilman Hemphill. I appreciate that.
Okay. I have one more, you guys, after this. So.
John, I got probably 2 questions. Can you explain, I mean, I thought we were 144,000 last meeting. Is that not correct? It's not where that started?
Mayor, Councilman McGoy, we started at my original recommendation when we started the budget process was 144. By the time we got through the last meeting, it was 180, which is why I brought it back in that format.
Okay, and also, can you explain the $130,000 except the $20,000 for a sign thing? I mean, can you bring that to real numbers? I mean, what is that $20,000 for? And are we getting that benefit and not spending the money, or are we no longer spending the money and the benefit is gone?
It was a combination of things, part of which was the purchase of the electronic kiosk out front. And then there were some other events that were attached to it. So under the original contract, the 130,000, the 20 was embedded in the 130. So
the true cost was 110?
Correct. Well, outside of that, I mean, the true cost still.
Well, but I mean, that's still there. That's paid for. That's
and that now will be removed under the new contract. Yes.
So we're really going from 110 to 180.
Technically, based apples to apples, yes.
It's a pretty big jump for one place to have to eat the whole thing when nobody else is playing.
And Mayor, Councilman McGoy, understand also that we budget 130,000. So in the past, the amount that actually got paid out was tied to actual. So if you recall, I believe Vance had indicated 155,000. Well, that was the maximum that we had available, right, under the revenues that were being generated. The budget was 130, but because we had tied it to this so-called 50% number, which gets confusing for folks, it ended up being in actuality, the last time we paid out, it was at 155. So if you took the 155 and you subtracted the 20 from that, you would have netted 135, which is why when I did 144, I felt that was an increase. And again, that was just my recommendation in the beginning.
And I know you really can't say, but is that still a real number, or?
Is what still a real number?
Our 50% or our 135?
Yeah, the 50% really, again, is based in statute. And what it says is whatever amount above your base excise tax, because you're taxing a sector at a higher rate, it's the difference between your base and that higher rate. In our case, it's half. That's where the 50% comes from.
I understand that. I'm just trying to grasp what's actually coming in when we can't say.
That number will fluctuate based on the year. So, for example, during the COVID year, that number dropped considerably and created some, I think, consternation, I think is fair on the Chamber's part, which was one of the reasons, one of two, why I decided to go with a stipend approach on a monthly basis, because in that way, the Chamber would have a number certain, and then they could plan their budget better than being on a roller coaster. So if you hit a recession and numbers drop, then they would be at risk of having their operation turned upside down to some degree by having less revenue.
Okay, I want to just say one more thing and then I'll shut up. But I love what the Chamber is doing. I think they're working hard. I'm not anti, but like Karina said and like Jenny said, this is a community-wide thing. Yet no one else in the community is stepping up. And it seems to be that way. Like I said last time, the library's that way, the airport's that way, the golf course is that way. We can't keep paying the whole thing. So that's just where I'm at, and I'm not anti or pro anything, and I haven't even decided how I'm gonna vote, but, I just think we need to be mindful of who's paying for this, because this does not generate enough tax. Downtown does not generate enough tax to pay what we're putting in there.
Okay, hang on, Vice Mayor. Does anybody have any more questions for Karina? No? Vice Mayor?
Last person want to
Yeah,
speak?
you want the last person?
Yeah.
Are we ready for that? Okay, thanks, Karina. Brings us to Mary Bingham. Mary Bingham served the city council for numerous of years, and we appreciated your service as well as on your other ventures. We appreciate your service to the community.
Thank you. Well, good evening, Mayor and Councilman. I'm Mary Bingham. I live at 2006 West 18th Street here in Safford. I'm here tonight representing myself as a tax-paying citizen of the city of Safford, and probably many more tax-paying citizens that don't know about what's going on right now. I will also preface it with, I have the utmost respect for the Graham County Chamber of Commerce, but it is the Graham County Chamber of Commerce, not the City of Safford Chamber of Commerce. I was told, and correct me if I'm wrong, that last year's chamber budget was $130,000. This year, our city manager proposed $144,000, which figures out to $12,000 a month. I believe that the $144,000 is adequate. If the chamber feels like they need more, there are several other taxing entities here in the county that I would think would want to step up and help keep the chamber operating in the capacity it's operating. It shouldn't just fall on the city of Safford, as many other things do in the city of Safford, for the benefit of the whole valley. I know our funding comes from the airport bed tax, and other taxing authorities either have no hotels or one or two. But that doesn't mean that they can't be approached for monies. I have a question. When the chamber puts on functions in the city of Safford, and I think it was already answered, who's responsible for the setup and the cleanup, the takedown, all of these things that Vance said were waived, all these fees that are waived? You start adding all of those up. The chamber already gets the city of Safford building in a contract for a 25-year contract for $10 a year. So you start adding all the incidentals to this base that you're talking about, and you're talking about much more money than $144,000. Because you don't waive the fees for a lot of other organizations and a lot of other entities. That's my place. I was also informed that the chamber wants another 5-year contract, and I believe a year-to-year contract is sufficient. We don't know where our economy's heading in today's economy. Look at what's happening around us. And I believe a year-to-year contract as opposed to a 5-year contract, unless there's some kind of get-out approach listed in that contract, that if things go south economically, we can get out of it. The 5.5 years that I spent as a city councilman, we were mindful that the monies we were playing with and spending were taxpayer dollars. And we tried to be very mindful of that fact, that that's whose monies we were spending. It's easy to spend other people's money when it's not coming out of your own pocket. And I believe that all of you owe it to the city of Safford citizens that are taxpayers to budget wisely and to give out your monies wisely. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Mrs. Boone?
I think the manager has an answer to if there's an economic slowdown and getting out of the contract.
Mayor, Councilman Lopez, there are state statute provisions that in these interorganizational type agreements that you have up to 3 years, you can cancel the contract in that time frame if you wanted to. And you could also amend so that you had provisions for termination with agreement within a certain time frame if you wanted to as well, and build it into the contract.
So without it even being in the contract, there's still something that stipulates the 3 years.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor. You done? Thanks, Mary. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
I too will say I support the chamber. I think they've done a fantastic job and all. I have no problem, there at all. My concern, like I think I've kind of picked up on quite a few too. To me, 180,000 that's a lot. The 144, I can understand that. What I figure I have been playing with and thinking about would be reasonable would be 150,000. If more, the chamber reports to the city manager every quarter. Isn't that right? Every quarter? And then if there is a definite need, I mean, something's really happening that more funds are needed, I think then it could come back to the council and, we can go through it then, we can address it then. But I feel 150 at this time after coming up, 144. That's still a nice budget to work with.
Okay.
And was there anybody want to have any comments on that or? But to me, it sounds like everybody supports the chamber. There's no problem there. The amount, I think that's for the, what we have to come up with.
Okay. Councilman Hemphill?
Thank you, Mayor. My view hasn't changed since the meeting 2 weeks ago. I'm in support of the 180,000. The comment I made then, which again, nobody disagrees with, this current chamber leadership came in year 1, I believe, of the contract, and nobody would argue that they didn't outperform that contract by way more than 15%. And I have no doubt that they'll outperform $180,000 by way more than 15%. So that's what it comes down to for me. And while I would hope and trust that the leadership will continue to solicit the other municipalities, that's still not a factor for me to decide what is right for our body or right for my vote on what Safford needs to do. And I'll also add that I'm confident this will be one of the wiser decisions that I make with taxpayer money, and the good that it can be used for. I have no question of that in my mind at all.
Mayor, I have a question for the Vice Mayor. Vice Mayor, in your proposal, are you proposing it to be the 5-year or each year?
5-year.
5-year?
That's what I was. And one thing I'd like to, just as far as it goes with the other, I'm frankly kind of tired of the city of Safford doing everything. And we probably will end up doing this anyway, but I think I would kind of hope that it would make the other places kind of think about, hey, come on, maybe we can step our ante up a little bit.
Anybody else have any more discussion on this? So,
Shall I make a motion?
yeah, let me ask this real quick. So, John, so I can understand, staff's recommendation is to come back. Staff's recommendation is the 180 for 5 years. That's staff's recommendation.
Mayor Council, well, that's what the council had directed staff to do at the last meeting, so that's what I brought.
Okay, the last meeting was to come up with the contract, but
Right,
in that
and so
last meeting, did you not present that as what staff recommended?
I presented it as a work session item, I believe, for discussion.
As a work session item for discussion?
Right. And the direction that I got, I felt, was the 180, so we went from the 144 to the 180.
So somebody from up here said 180.
Correct.
I didn't say 180.
Okay.
I don't know who did. Somebody, I thought staff brought it to us as that. You guys, does anybody remember? Catherine Hemphill, do you remember? Because I thought they were negotiating it. I thought between
Well,
John and Vance. was
As a work
negotiating.
session item, I think the chamber brought 180. Correct? As a,
It was amended as a result of the discussion, and it was, originally, I believe it was more than 180. I think it was like 192 or something.
So whose discussion between staff and
Council.
the chamber? They had that, you guys had that discussion and staff said, okay, we'll meet you halfway, which is 180.
I brought the 144, the discussion turned to go into 180. That's what I brought.
and the discussion included, you're not asking for enough.
I said that.
Mhm.
I said you asked for interest.
Right.
That's what I said.
Right.
I did.
So I'd like to move that we renew the chamber contract at $15,000 a month for 5 years.
That's the 180.
Yes.
Okay, so can I get you to say the full amount?
Sure. I move that we accept the chamber contract renewal for $15,000 a month at a total of $180,000 a year for 5 years, which would be $900,000 for the 5 years
In uninflated dollars.
in no interest
No
added dollars.
interest, no interest dollars.
Exactly.
Okay, so I got a motion on the floor. Do I need a second?
Second.
I have a second. I have a motion and a second to approve the chamber's contract for $180,000 a year for 5 years. Is that stipulated good enough, Mr. Hemphill?
I think so.
And that's what you're seconding, correct?
Correct.
Do we want any more discussion on that?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think Mr. Richards is right. I think back in the day, Mr. Dean Craig kind of got the bed tax going. And at that time, he owned 3 motels. He wanted the bed tax to help with tourism. So that's, to me, is where it kind of got initiated. Now, we say we're just using taxpayer money, but this bed tax is collected by people that are going through our valley, contractors that stay there. So it's not all our direct money. We're getting it from people coming through. That's where we're gathering a lot of it. And again, it was designated for tourism. When we get going later on in the budget this evening, you'll see that 76% of our general fund budget is generated by sales tax that we collect here. And so we need to encourage that. You know, that's a big lump sum that we get just from that. I know that the chamber has gathered more members since it began. This phase of leadership began. It incorporates the small business of EAC and helps train small businesses, and together they help guide small businesses that generate sales tax. They also have, I think the last Thursday of every month, they get together and they have like a roundtable discussion. And the last one I went to involved a lot of NGOs. A lot of NGOs do not get their voice heard often enough, especially during a time when it's donation time to help supplement things that are local, to give monies to things that are local. And I've seen them get out there and do that. They help with business training, to help train some of the other people coming up in business, to help take over businesses that we have here. We try to grow them here at home. And they do that. I learned during the COVID time, again, that we encouraged everybody to shop local. We went out of our way to encourage this. We had parking outside of businesses. We even tried to help them with the utilities at that time to let them off the hook for their utilities a couple months, you know, to keep the business going. And with the parking and stuff. So also, I'm kind of hoping the Manor House is going to get going again, so we can have another place to party, just like the venue. But I know this council, this bunch of people has done way better than the ones I've been associated with. I don't know if I go back as far as Reed. He's a lot older than me. But we talked about shop local, shop local, shop local, and I know there's lots of money, but I think it's well spent in this case. I'm hoping if the vice mayor has anything, we have a motion already, I know that. If he has anything in between the 150 and 180, close to the 180, I hope, to cover that too. I just like to see our sales tax, especially with that 76% being ours. We need to generate it more and keep it, especially if we have a downtime coming. Especially that if it comes, we're gonna encourage them to shop local again, and we're gonna need this help. Our own economic department needs this help. And yeah, I know some events, like Mr. McGoy said, some events are getting kind of big where they can chip in a little bit more after the event, to help out in some areas to answer Mary's stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at, Mayor, is I'm with you too about the benefits. But anyway, yes, you did say you should allow more for the inflation.
Inflation, I did.
And you said you love me. That's the last thing I heard.
Okay, all right, okay.
Okay.
And I appreciate what you said, Councilman. I'm not for the 180, but I am definitely for something between 150 and 180. If somebody come up with a number, but not
So,
180.
Mayor, right now you have.
I have a motion on the floor.
Okay,
We're in
then
the
let's go.
discussion still of it. So if there's no more discussion, we need to go ahead and move forward with this vote of 180.
I believe you can do a friendly amendment to the original motion if
Well, we
the
could,
vice
but
mayor would allow
I'm
it.
confident that Mr. Hemphill wants to go with his original motion.
I'd like to, yes.
So,
Well, that kind of put an old fella on the spot.
Sorry about that, Arm.
Yeah, I'm sure.
so right now we have a motion on the floor for a contract for 180 to Graham County Chamber of Commerce for a 5-year contract, and I have a second. Any more discussion? If not, all those in favor? Any opposed? Opposed? Okay. So we have to have a contract. Guys, what's the number, Vice Mayor? Nick, can you give me a motion on the floor?
Okay, then I move we do 160,000.
I second that.
Got 160,000. Is it for 5 years?
5 years.
That's our motion on the floor. And I have a second. Any discussion on that?
Small amendment.
Huh?
I want to amend it. Another shot, 170. And we'll have a bidding war.
You want to stick with your original bid, or original 160?
Exactly.
Okay. So I have a motion on the floor for 160 for 5 years. Any more discussion? If not, I'm entertaining a vote. All those in favor for 160 for 5 years? So be it. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. John, that's your contract.
Thank you, sir. Did you get that?
You get that full thing, NB? Okay. We appreciate it, you guys, and so we'll move right on. You guys all have my number if you want to call me. Moving on to item 9.5, council approval of manager's appointment for the city clerk.
Mayor, council, members of council, it is with great pleasure that I offer to you Beatrice Driver as the next city clerk. The background essentially is that we went through a series of interviews with a number of people. During that time, Ms. Driver filled in as city clerk and did an excellent job. I think she would make a great city clerk, and so I bring her to you as my recommended appointment.
Mayor, I make the motion that we approve Beatrice Driver as clerk.
I'm happy to second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve our city clerk, Beatrice Driver. All those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Do we need that as a roll call vote for that, since it's the appointment of the?
That I don't know.
Because is this still falling under our old rules? Because
It does.
It would require a roll
It
vote.
does,
Ask our attorney. Is he not here?
Can you hear us, Bill?
I'm here if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. Do we need a roll call vote to
good.
appoint?
Well, technically, you need a roll call vote for everything.
Wow.
If you're doing it by hand signal and the clerk can identify, that's fine. If she can't identify a hand signal, then you need an oral roll call vote.
All right, and it was unanimous, so I
Thank
think
you.
we're good to go.
Okay.
All right, bring us on to item 10.1.
Wait, can I just ask
Yes,
something?
yes.
Could you explain what that page number 204 is?
For which one?
Where we just approved your appointment?
You had asked for page numbers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In case anybody wanted to go back and refer to, where it was in on our agenda?
Oh, on the agenda, you now have a page number.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I thought it'd make it for me, it makes it easier.
Perfect.
I like it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Rob, 10.1, item tentative budget.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Staff's here tonight seeking your approval of Resolution R23-011, which is a resolution for adopting the city's fiscal 23-24 tentative budget. State statutes required a kind of a multi-pronged, multi-step approach to the adoption of the budget. This is the next formal step that we have. Tonight's action will be setting the maximum of the budget for fiscal 23-24. By the time the final budget comes in front of you on May 28th, the council can so choose to go to a lower number or can move items around that budget from one program or one department to another, but they cannot exceed that value. In your packet tonight is the state required statute or statutorily required forms, state schedules A through G as in Gerald. I'm not going to go through each one of those, nor am I going to go through over 100 pages of the detailed budget, which is by department. That's probably more familiar to you and to the community that you have seen throughout our discussions over the last few months. But I will be highlighting specifically certain areas of the budget that are important, kind of go through our decision process that we've gone through with the council, and then seek your action tonight. Yeah, it doesn't like it. Go back. So tonight, the budget is done in alignment with the community needs as well as the priorities established by the council. So we've taken input from the council and some of the prior decisions you have made. We put those into our financial policies, which the council adopted a couple of months ago. And we continue to listen to the community departments in identifying what items and what programs we're bringing forward to you for adoption. So in that packet, it includes all the transactions previously adopted by the council. So these would be adds of positions like you did earlier in this fiscal year, adding a police officer into the police department's budget. That action was carried forward. It also includes actions to where the council had adopted year one of the 5-year capital improvement program just on April 10th. So all prior actions of this council are included in our conversations and in the documentation that you have in front of you today. Ultimately, our budget is just right around $78.9 million. That's about $5 million more than the prior fiscal year. And that's mainly because of adding additional grant funding as well as adding our contingency. And some of our CIP costs have gone up. One of the things I wanted to first go through are some of these major assumptions that's building on the slide here. On the expenditure side, it includes the salary adjustments related to the approved salary plan. So that was the market analysis that HR had gone through. So we have modeled that, and that is included in the number in front of you today. It also includes the known value we've got from our healthcare trust in that our premiums were going up 4.5%, which has been shared with the council thus far. As well as we heard from council at prior meeting that your desire was to take a shared plan of all plans to the 90-10 split between employer and employee basis. We also look forward if we have a known retirement or somebody's identified that they're retiring. We also do plan for those expenses because they do, based on policy of council, get to cash out certain leave times up to certain levels. We know, we've talked before in regards to some of our CIP projects that have come forward, as well as our work sessions on departmental budgets and capital program, that there are inflationary pressures. I mean, a day doesn't go by that I think any member of the community is going through some sense of inflationary pressure. And specifically for Safford, we've seen it handily in both the purchase of power and natural gas. Those prices went skyrocketing through. We also know that our fuel, certain other commodities such as ammunition, our building materials, not only just for break fix, but for capital, have gone exponentially at this point. Since we know purchase of power and natural gas has gone up, we are also a consumer of our own utilities. So we did include a increase in our utility expenses across all organizations. On the revenue side, this budget is built upon the tenet of no tax or new fee increases. There was the purchase price change that had happened in the current fiscal year for both electric and the commodity price changes for gas, and those were within existing fee structures, but there's no additional fee increases.
I stand corrected, it's not 76% generated locally, it's only
70%, you're fine. That's, gives ourselves the 76, because then the 6% goes to the state, comes back to us, so maybe it is 76% generated.
That's right.
I like your math. So within the general fund, it is approximately 70% locally generated. That means shopping local is critical. We are finding that our local transaction privilege tax or sales tax remains strong, and I'll show you specific charts in a moment. Our urban revenue sharing, or that which comes from the state, which is income tax, we spoke during our revenue conversation at the beginning of April, that those are coming in very strong, and it's an anomaly because of some legislation from last year and negotiation that the league did. So we are not modeling that revenue as ongoing. We pulled that out to do one-time capital improvements or to set that money aside into fund balance for council's future direction. State shared sales tax is also trending what's happening locally. So whatever you buy local, part of it goes to the state, and then part of that comes back to us. So perhaps, if you ran the numbers, maybe we're getting closer to that 76%. Vehicle license taxes, that is pretty much flat. I think a part of that is driven by the economics of a lot of new cars weren't there. And the way the VLT works is it's based on that manufacturer suggested retail price at the very beginning. It doesn't reset when that used car resells at a higher rate. So as new cars weren't finding their way into the taxing fold, that number started to flatten out. Specifically on property tax, we are recommending that we keep that rate flat. You may have seen that we had to issue a truth in taxation notice into the local newspaper this weekend in order to meet statutory deadlines. Even though we're keeping the rate flat, that does increase revenues coming into us as the assessed valuation does go up. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment.
Okay, and I kind of appreciate the way you worded it this time around. Usually when it comes out, we get beat up even though we didn't change the rate, it went up stuff. You explained it a little better. I don't know how you got away with it because I thought we were under state law. We could only say certain things.
Right. So, Mayor, members of council, yes, state law is very particular in this context to where we have to use the wording that we are, quote, raising taxes that is prescribed in statute, even though you didn't raise the rate. Yeah. Even though it was driven by an assessed evaluation as assessed by the county assessor going up, which then caused taxes to increase. And it was of no action of this council or of this body.
And just to clarify, we can't publish it, a variation of their ad. We can speak to it. And what we have done at the request of council is to create our own version of the ad, which I think Rob has embedded in the presentation. So that actually was a direct result of a council request in the past. So we had created that other document.
Thank you.
So on some other revenue sources, our highway user revenue funds that comes from the state that is used for our roadway maintenance and improvement, that is a reduction year over year. Some of that is just the construct of the whole gas tax calculation at the state level. But probably the biggest part of that is the population growth for Safford is not growing at the same rate as the rest of the state. And that's how this gets apportioned out, which is based on population. So as your population stays flat, everyone else goes up, your percentage actually does drop. The budget and the revenue specifically don't reflect any potential legislation that may be an impact. I just was reading today that the budget did drop between the House leadership and Senate leadership, as well as the governor. That has been issued out to the legislators themselves to look. So we will be looking at that as well to make sure there's nothing negative in there. If there is, we'll bring that back on the 22nd of May to have that conversation. And finally, our enterprise funds are trending higher, mainly due to the PPA increase and the commodity price adjustment that had just occurred. And we will reevaluate that moving into the current fiscal year and the next fiscal year of '24 to see if that adjustment needs to go downward because of a settling down of those commodity prices. So some of the highlights that we have already talked about that have been part of departmental conversations or in our CIP. The operating budget does include service level increases, what we're calling those supplemental increases, in a couple of areas. One is enhanced code enforcement. I'll call it that from a programmatic perspective, adding 1 FTE in funding to deal with any legal and/or abatement costs to truly help beautify and to help ensure that we are treating all property owners fairly in regards to the safety and view of their homes. We're also adding an FTE in the parks maintenance program. This is kind of in advance of, not only because we are finding that we need that in our current service delivery, but this is going to be in advance as well of the El Paso Park and 8th and Discovery coming on into production, if you will. We will then reevaluate once those projects get complete, and we are running on full steam at that point. A couple of position reclasses, both in HR and library, that were already discussed with you, as well as we had utility rate study funding set aside that we would bring back to this council to execute agreements as necessary. The capital improvement program includes the almost $30 million year one of that $85 million 5-year plan, and grant funds about $9 million across all programs. And what I mean by programs, it could be airport, it could be library, it could be police, it could be any of those programs. So we are budgeting $9 million for that purpose. Specifically to contingency, the reason why we have a $10 million contingency is to deal with the what if, right? No one planned that our electric costs and our gas costs would skyrocket like they did. Without the ability to have that contingency and have the legal appropriation to spend the money, we would have been in a world of hurt. So we are setting $10 million across all funds. That gives you, this body, great flexibility in fiscal '24. We've set money, $2 million in the general fund, $3 million in grants, I will call it, and then $5 million in the enterprise as items come up. If we need to make a move, we would then come to this body and ask for that use. Specifically for grants, we always budget a certain value because there could be grants that are coming out that we don't even know about yet. So we need to budget for that expense, but we just don't know where the money's coming from yet. And if there is no expense needed, we don't come to you and ask to spend the money. As within those financial policies, any contingency use is at the direction and approval of the council. And we include all those personnel expenses that I had talked about before. Maybe just highlight the one where we are actually direct budgeting this year for the Christmas bonus. If you recall, over the past couple of years, it was an action that happened once a year, and it was actually a contingency request of council. Can we do a Christmas bonus at set value? And we need to move money from contingency. This last go-around, the city manager had indicated, let us add it to the budget at a set value. So this is the same value that was issued for calendar year '22 at $500 per full-time and $250 for the part-timers.
I'll have a question on that when the season comes.
I'm sorry?
On the Christmas one, I'll bring that up when the season comes.
You need just, we'll bring it to you at that time.
Yes,
So
sir.
it's for approval.
So, thank you. Have a good evening. So there have been some changes, significant changes since the budget workshops that we wanted to walk through. And again, these are budgeted values. That is not intended to say this is the decision. If there's a future decision, then that comes back to the council. So we did add $50,000 into the council in their council's budget specifically for their community donation program. Staff will be putting together a proposal on how to go about soliciting input from the community, from those nonprofits, and the program by which then the council can make that adoption. City manager was working with the police department on a Citizens Police Academy. I'm sorry.
Brian, could you just make sure he gets home okay? He's not feeling well at all, please. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Great, thank you. Vice Mayor, members of the council, we did also add $35,000 for a Citizens Police Academy that the city manager is working with the police department on now and bring that framework back to you. Our recommendation is to use at least some of the opioid settlement funding. Those funds are available for outreach and education, and we believe that would be an appropriate expense. We did budgetarily what's in front of you in the budget. We took at least the base from 144 to 180 for the council, for the chamber contract. Yes.
Vice Mayor Ortega, I just wanted to say for the record that Mayor Couch has left the meeting, and that you will take over, just so that we get it into the record that we note that at this juncture, he has left the meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Sorry.
Great, thank you. So again, we're budgeted at 180, but based on the council's action just this evening, we will make that appropriate payment based upon that action.
Is that 165?
160.
I'll have to go back and look at the minutes once they're published. We are also recommending 2 additional position reclasses that you have not seen yet. One is taking the assistant to the city manager and reclassing that to assistant to the city manager / budget manager, as well as taking a street maintenance worker 2 and making that a lead street maintenance worker, where our public works director is seeking to have 2 crews running simultaneously at the same level. There was a request for a net new position as well. We did not recommend that at this point, based on, we wanted to see where those HERF revenues were coming in. So that may be an ask of this council next year to actually add then a additional position, so there would be 2 crews of 4 each. We are also asking for a new position. In this, it's specific to an engineering contract service or services contract specialist. This will be a focus on the delivery of the CIP as well as for granting. As we've seen, just even where the current assistant to the city manager submitted a request into Senator Kelly's office, and within just a few short weeks, we were green-lighted to move forward to Senate appropriation for about $2.4 million, if I'm not mistaken. So grants, having somebody focus on grants will have a payback in short time. We're also included, we told you we're finalizing our fleet schedule. That's about $2.2 million out of the Fleet Internal Service Fund, specifically to those programs that you see there. And we finalized all the fund transfers and budget stabilization reserves and all the other elements that were in the adopted financial policies. If you were to look at the finer details and all the gory numbers in the packet in front of you, you would see that all of those elements were met.
Sir, so when you say fleet replacement schedule covering the airport sanitation, that reads that it also involves the airport, the sanitation, and the electric department?
Correct. Vice Mayor and members of the council, yes. So the specific fleet requests that are outside of the enterprise fleet program, so these are heavy pieces of equipment or specialized pieces of equipment, were identified by these organizations. So in the case of airport, I believe Cameron talked about, as well as did Lance, talked about that multifunctional piece of equipment to help do things at the airport property. Within sanitation, because of the delay in the building and delivery of the sanitation trucks themselves, this is actually 3 into next year, because I don't think we're going to get anything in order to pay the bill by June 30. In the street program, it's looking at a new painter as well as a new street sweeper. And then finally, in electric, it was a carryover of a bucket truck, as I recall, that was budgeted in the current year. And again, due to supply chain issues and the like, we're moving it into next.
Okay, so this isn't equipment from the contract we had for our smaller vehicles.
Right. So, yeah, Vice Mayor, members of the council, this is not anything to do with enterprise fleet. Those numbers for enterprise fleet were already included in the departmental's budgets at the time we brought those to you, on who was going to be getting what type of vehicle. We had some minor adjustments after that, but they were already included in the budget.
And their tool bins?
I'm sorry?
And the tool bins that go on the vehicles?
The tool bins, any of those costs, as far as what I would call make ready or to outfit them, all of those costs are included in the budget as well.
Okay, they're all in there now, all right.
So given all that, what this ultimately boils down to is this sheet. It means nothing to most people, but it's required. This is one of those strange items in state statutes that says thou shalt put your budget together based on the schedules that would be adopted and submitted to you by the State Auditor General. Fantastic. This means nothing to most people, but at the end of the day, what's important on this list is that bottom right-hand number that might be a little hard to see here, but it's $78,737. That's hard to say. That's the bottom line. That's what you're approving of today. It's a combination of the ins and outs of money, the combination of all the different departments that are behind all of those schedules. So ultimately, what the council will be adopting tonight is that number, if you so choose to do so. To compare where we've been over the last 5 years, starting with fiscal year 2020 on the far left of this chart, all the way to the far right, which is the state constitution's expenditure limitation. Basically, the state constitution says, hey, City of Safford, you could spend $121,570,000 if you want. We're not recommending that. We're recommending our number, which is just under $79,000. But if you start comparing it year over year and say, what's happened, what has changed, let's walk through a little bit of that. Let's first focus on fiscal 2022. That 81 million included your debt, your bond proceeds to use for your public safety debt payment. So that was a $12 to $13 million anomaly from a year-over-year view. So what has then changed moving forward? Why is it 73 then 78? Part of that is some of the inflationary pressures that we're seeing here. We've came to you during the CIP and said we have 3 projects that we need to take northward, in some cases almost 50% or more, because of the cost that came in of some of our early estimates. Hollywood Road being one, Airport Water being another. Those projects are coming in quite substantially. Additionally, into next year, as we brought to council during the CIP adoption, we added money, at least in year 2, for fully funding, as we know it today, 8th and Discovery Park, as well as into next fiscal year, we added additional money to get El Paso Park done. So in total, what makes up the difference from 2023 to 2024, why the $5 million hit? Big piece of that is the capital improvement program, as well as we're actually adding an additional $2 million of contingency that's sitting there if you want to spend it or if we need to spend it. But it's not going to be spent without this council's knowledge and authorization.
You add 2 million more to the 10 million?
So yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. So in the current fiscal year, we have an $8 million contingency budgeted. Next year, we're recommending a $10 million contingency.
And this takes this 2 million into account?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
that takes $2 million into account. So of that $5 million difference, $2 million of it is contingency. So another way to look at our budget is the expenditure by fund type. So it's one to look at that Schedule A and say this means nothing. So let's start putting it down into an area that might make more sense to you and to the community. First, expenditure by fund type. And this pie chart, if we start looking in that upper right-hand quadrant where it says general fund at 19%, this is your general government. This is police, this is fire, this is parks, this is library, this is general government. So that accounts to roughly 19% of that 79 million or so. The biggest piece of this, as I indicated before, is our capital projects fund, or this is all capital projects, whether it's coming from the enterprise, coming from the general fund. This is now what it takes to build things. So we pulled that out separately and said, we're going to spend $32 million roughly to build stuff and maintain things. So really you can't look at that and say year over year, is that going to happen every year? Only if you're building $32 million worth of stuff every year. Right? Many of these things are one-time events, like building a significant park infrastructure or doing a major roadway. Those might be more recurring, but the park's infrastructure is not. The enterprise funds, those are our public-facing utilities, accounts for about 33%. Those are not being derived or paid for with general taxes. Those are user fee driven. So in total, that's how we view of that roughly $79 million, where would we put that bucket? There's another little sliver up there called special revenue funds, and really what we're talking there is your HERF funding and any grant funding. We need to actually have those pulled aside, at least from a contingency perspective, and show that as special revenue. Perhaps this is a view that's maybe more palatable and more understandable, at least in the high level, and it might be easier to see within your packet. So this is looking at the general government budget. Now, this is not necessarily just general fund. It's all things associated with running the general government, which again, police, fire, library, parks, all of the back office stuff from clerk to finance to city manager, city council, and so on, is roughly 22.5 million. It also includes our cost that we transfer to the street program, which is that half-cent sales tax for our roadways, as well as our debt service payment for all things general government, such as our fire pumper, our police facility and the like, and our police debt for the pension. What I wanted to get across here is that right quadrant, upper right quadrant, which is the cost of personnel. So 35% of general government is a personnel expense. And that's, in my humble opinion, very intuitive. Why? Because we're a service organization. And that which we do from a general government perspective is nothing but service. So we have our police officers out there servicing the community, our firefighters out there servicing the community, library patrons coming into this facility and having the staff there wait on them and help them and help them with their programs and the like. So it makes sense that a good portion of this pie is for people, right? All the costs for people. What is a bit of an anomaly on here is that wedge that's in the lower part, which is for capital. We don't have that level of capital in our general government on an annual basis. We have two very large projects for our parks infrastructure that would be there. I would bet to say if you look at this in 2 years, you would see this number going down quite substantially unless you have other general fund needs that you want to fund out of your capital program. So now when we compare the general government, if you will, to our streets program, the opposite is true here. Only 14% is people, and the vast majority, over 66%, is for capital. Why? Because we're maintaining, building, repairing, ripping out, reconstructing, whatever it may be, of our rights of ways and sidewalks and the like. So it's not heavily laden with people. It is very heavily laden with our capital, very capital intensive, which is why we also look for grants and are looking opportunities to partner anytime we can to make sure we can get these larger capital projects complete. When we look at all enterprises together, again, it is almost a similar story as our street program, but it's even less so. Only 11% of the enterprise budget is spent on people. Why? Because it's heavily capital and it's heavily what I would call O&M or operations and maintenance. Why? We have to buy the power to resell it. We have to buy the gas to resell it. We have to buy chemicals to treat. We have to pay electrical to run the pumps. I mean, the cost of operating those utilities from an O&M perspective, it far surpasses what it costs for the people to actually operate that equipment. And our capital is fairly substantial given our investments in our enterprise infrastructure.
So just to interject at this point for a second. So this is why months ago when we had discussions regarding the rate studies and the idea that somehow rate studies would be used for salaries in the enterprise funds. And I had a discussion with you at that time that the composition of the enterprise funds is very different than the general fund. And that most of the expenses that you incur in the utilities are based on your O&M and your capital, not your personnel. So again, if you're looking at this pie chart and then saying, well, you're increasing the rates for salaries, you can see that the salaries are 11% out of 100% of that fund, meaning there are a lot of other things you're paying for, not salaries in the enterprise funds in particular. The general fund, different. The general fund, more predominantly salary-based. So I just wanted to point that out.
So moving on, getting a little bit more granular on the general fund or general government, I took the liberty at least combining different departments into what I would call programmatic or thematic areas. So it goes to prove that, like almost every other jurisdiction, that public safety is paramount, and that's where most of the general fund money is being spent. So about 8.5 million out of that general fund budget of about 22 million or so is being spent on public safety. This includes police, fire, as well as our judicial part of running the court. From a community enrichment perspective, this is where combining those things that add value to the community, where our community members, visitors, and tourists get to take advantage of those. That's our parks, our libraries, that's all the things and the amenities that happen. The reason why that's so high is because we are making very large capital investments that we had just talked about, and that's included in that number. You start going down into general government, and this includes all back office. This is everything else. This is running the business, what it takes to ensure that all those other services can happen to the community, as well as that we have an operations for all of our utilities. And then community development. This is really our community development, our building safety, as well as economic development. And they're not very heavily capital, if at all. So their numbers start to dwindle, but it's predominantly all services as well as some commodities and contractuals. And just to show you then the contingency value that's there, $2 million, as it compares to everything else. So that's giving you some headroom in regards to should there be some major event next year that we need to deal with, or perhaps there's an opportunity for an investment that the council so desires. That capability will exist. Another way to look at our budget, at least from the personnel perspective, is to where is it being spent? So as we just showed those three other pie charts from general government to HERF or streets, as well as enterprise, this is another way to look at that. Where are we spending all of our personnel expenses? Again, this is wages, salaries, benefits, and the like. And over 64% is going into the general fund. 31% into the enterprise, and then our streets program. All personnel expenses are only 5%. So just another way to look at our personnel expenses.
You had one more, there it is. All right, I'm back.
Okay. And then finally, the way to then take that chart on the left and look at it in a different way on the right is, well, what makes up personnel expenses? And here are the different categories that's required that we submit in our state schedules. Wages and salaries is about 69%, and then the next largest is our healthcare cost at 14% of that total. So that's talking about the expenses. Now, how do we pay for it? So the resources that are available that we have either in our pocket today or what we're projecting that would be coming in the front door tomorrow is about $122 million. We're not here to tell you we're asking for 122. We're here asking for just under 79 million. So this is letting you know that you have the funding. We have the ongoing revenue to deal with ongoing expenses, and we have the fund balance above your budget stabilization reserve or your reserve requirements to build the things that are in the capital program. This just gives you the distribution by fund on where is that $122 million. As you can see, there's about 31 million in the general fund. You start doing math on the back of a napkin, you're like, we're nowhere close to that number. The answer is you're right, you're not close to that number. You're still reserve requirement of that 50% of prior years plus debt service is almost double based upon what you have in that fund. Digging a little bit more on where our revenues come from on local taxes and intergovernmental. Again, this is just for general fund. This chart just depicts a few types of revenue, and there's 3 bars per type, and that left bar is our current year budget. The center bar is our current year experience and what we're expecting by the end of the year. And then the far right bar is then what we're projecting into fiscal 24. You can see our local sales taxes, what we budgeted, we're trending up, and we're still showing a trend up based upon inputs we received. Not necessarily the world according to Rob. It's looking at multi-faceted information from the Eller School at U of A, the Joint Legislative Budget Council, as well as other inputs on where is this economy headed and what's happening relative to local tax issues, specifically into Safford. Again, your sales tax base is predominantly retail. Excuse me. You don't ride that wave necessarily of tourism, that if there were to be some drop off of tourism, if you will, your revenue streams are still fairly consistent, given your local employment with the mine and others, that those dollars are still flowing in from a local perspective. And you can see state shared income tax, that urban revenue share, it's going up. Yay, isn't that great? Again, that's an anomaly. Really, the point to this is to basically say our fiscal 23 budget is really what our fiscal 25 ongoing revenue and 24 revenue is what we're modeling, not that bar for ongoing. And then the rest of it starts to flatten out. And again, on that property tax, what we're recommending is keeping that rate flat. And what that's going to do is take our entire tax levy to about $308,000. So as you can see, the scale, $308,000 off the property taxes versus almost $9.9 million of locally generated sales taxes. It's a bit of a rounding number, if you will. It's still very important. It's important from a basket of revenue to ensure that you have all those pieces, but it by no means is something that is risky to us, that if we weren't able to raise those fees, what would happen? All we're doing is keeping our rate flat, and that is the outcome of keeping it flat. Specific to property tax, just because local government is usually what people know, they're the ones that show up, right, when they call 911. They're the ones that they see when they go to the library. So when they see their property tax bill come in, they say, surely it must be Safford because I see them everywhere, right? It must be them. This is just showing you specifically what is at the Graham County Treasurer's Office in regards to the current, or the fiscal 22 or the calendar 22 tax year, that the city of Safford is about 5% of a average resident's tax bill. The vast majority is coming from schools, higher ed, and the county.
That'd be nice to put in the paper, get that chart there.
So another way that, as the city manager had indicated, this is just a cutoff of what was in the, that was presented, I believe, in the last couple of years. That first line is basically trying to make the math easy, $100,000 of an assessed valuation that the county assessor valued that property at. You start running the math through based on state statutes, it's 10% of that LPV, it's yada, 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 multiply it all the way through, $51.35. Now, if we say, in this example, if the Graham County assessor said property taxes, I'm assessing, I believe they are going to be 10% higher than the current year. What happens is then obviously the base goes up, the rate stays the same, and then that property tax that's due from the customer on that far right-hand side does go up. That's what's called the levy. That is the levy amount, not the tax rate. The tax rate that's highlighted there stayed the same. But when the levy goes up, greater than new construction, state law says thou shalt have a truth in taxation hearing, thou shalt call it a tax increase, thou shalt use only these words, and thou shalt have that hearing and communicate it to all in the community by publicizing it twice and to make sure that anybody that has any concerns moves forward. So while this is not the experience that we're having, again, we're not taking it up quite that high whatsoever, but this is just to show you an example of what happens when the assessed valuation of existing property, not new construction, were to rise, and if the council were to keep their rate the same, the levy will grow. So moving forward, Vice Mayor, members of the council, again, what's in front of you today is to approve the tentative budget. When that happens, it sets off a whole slew of additional statutory requirements that we need to do, publications, coming back to you, public hearings, you name it. I'm not going to read this to you. The bottom line is, if you pass this tonight, we will be back on the 22nd of May for a kind of a two-step dance. First is the public hearing, and then it would be the final adoption of that budget. It is our plan then to bring back the property tax levy to you on June 12th for adoption, so we can meet our statutory requirement by getting that into the county treasurer by August 3rd. So Vice Mayor and members of council, with that, staff is recommending adoption of Resolution R23-011, which is a resolution adopting the City of Safford's fiscal 23-24 tentative budget as presented and per the attached state schedules A through G. Thank you. Be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
Does anybody have any questions? I think that was a great presentation myself.
The whole process has been fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you. Great teamwork with everyone within all the department heads, working with the city manager, working with the hopefully soon to be assistant to the city manager / budget manager. I think this was a very good process to kind of lay out and then to hopefully replicate moving forward. So.
In that case, no discussion. Can I hear a motion?
Vice Mayor, make the motion that we adopt the tentative budget for Resolution R2311, adoption of the City of Safford fiscal year 23-24 tentative budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 23-011. That's the City of Safford fiscal year 2023-2024 tentative budget. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. Then we'll move on. Thank you, Rob. Very step. Oh, okay.
This is approval of resolution number R23-011, a resolution of the mayor and the city council of City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, setting forth the tentative budget and establishing the maximum budget amount for the City of Safford for the fiscal year of 2023-2024.
Thank you. And Rob, staff and everybody did a fantastic job, and all during the process, you really helped. I know you helped me understand it a lot better. I was ready for it today. Thank you. And we'll move on to item number 11, announcement of current events.
Vice Mayor, I don't have anything for the announcement, but I'd like to say thank you to Jamie and Manager Casella and the code enforcement team. I want to say you guys are doing an awesome job. You know, I mean, you guys really impressed me with what you guys do, and keep up the good work. So
Thank you.
that's all I could say. Jamie, make sure you tell your crew, okay?
Anybody else?
Current events, are we still?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would just wanted to announce that we did make an offer and get an acceptance for a finance director. That individual will start May 22nd, so it's been a very long haul, but I'm pretty excited about him. He seems like a very dedicated individual, got good references, so I'm looking forward to bringing him on board on the 22nd.
Anybody else? No. Then we'll move on to item number 12, request for future agenda items. Anybody have any? None, John?
Nope.
Then we'll move on to number 13, operational items. Finance, personnel expenditures. John?
Vice Mayor, members of council, there was a request regarding Mr. Sweeney's tenure with the city and expenditures that have been made in the finance department. So for the first 3 quarters of fiscal year 23, we have spent $110,000. We had a savings of $51,000 from the former finance director, so we netted about $59,000 on that. And we had a separate contract with an individual that we've expended $14,000 on.
Thank you. And I'd just like to make a comment. I think whatever we spent, that $110,000, whatever, it was well worth it, because I think we got this things kind of in order, and for the next individual to step in, it's not going to be starting from the scratch. There's going to be a good, strong foundation. Thank you.
Rob, are you sure you don't want to stay? We'll put a target for you.
There's been an offer and acceptance, you know, there's no friendly amendment to that motion.
Okay, all right, just making sure.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to capital improvement plan. Dave?
Thank you, Vice Mayor and Council. So as a lot of the CIP, we're doing something a little bit different too. There's been a lot of changes, obviously. So this update that you guys are going to see tonight is probably not the one that you guys are typically used to seeing. So obviously any feedback that you guys got, if it helps you, we're going to kind of introduce a new tool that we've been kind of using. So if you guys got some feedback on it, we'd greatly appreciate it. Maybe.
I had to use the. You want the feedback now?
That's it. That was the presentation.
There's all the capital right there.
And we don't have your presentation on our stuff, right?
You don't.
Okay.
But if you'd like a copy, we can get it to you.
I think I've got one on here and a solid book on most of it.
And like I said, tonight's just kind of introduce the new tools that we're kind of using, so you guys can see it. You guys will have access to anything any month that you guys want to look at these. So obviously, just the request through the city manager, and we'll get you guys a copy of it. When we talk about a lot of the CIP breakdown, we look at them in 3 different phases. We have a design phase. If we go across the top here, we have a design phase, we have a bid and award phase, and a construction phase. And then we can also look at those, whether they're being done internally or externally. So when we talk about projects, these numbers that are kind of sitting in the middle are the active projects that we're working on. So for instance, if we look at the internal, we have 8 different internal projects that we're working on for a design phase. We have 8 different projects that we're working on for a bid and award phase. And then internally within the city, we got 9 projects that are active for construction. And that's through a lot of the different department heads and a lot of the internal resources for it. We do have this up and coming projects as well. These are some of our kind of our lower ranking systems, lower ranking projects, so we can squeeze them in when we can, and we kind of work them through. So obviously we've on some of the external construction phases, I made a highlight in there. We had some of the challenges of last year. We had 4 of them that were bids that were no bids or rejected bids. So some of this is dynamic in the fact that it comes back and we have to kind of redo a bid package. We'll kind of look at some of this in detail here. This is what you guys were kind of accustomed to seeing before. It didn't generate a lot of conversation or thoughts or debate or a lot of insight. So we did put this in here as a slide just so you could see it if that was what you wanted to see. But it didn't answer a lot of questions and it didn't give a lot of directions when we gave updates. It was just a lot of numbers on there. So going back to this tool that we kind of, you probably won't be able to read a lot of this tonight, but this is the same idea that we just looked at on that previous slide. We have the design phase, a contracting phase, and a construction phase. When those numbers were up there, this is actually the detailed list of each one of those projects in those areas. So if you guys remember a lot of the CIP, what we did before is with a lot of your guys' input, we came up with a ranking system, and it put a priority listing for us to kind of look at it for focus. There was some economic impact, how many people did it impact, new infrastructure, a lot of different criteria that we use to do a lot of the ranking system. So if you guys get this, once we give you access to this, or you can, if you can read it off of tonight's slides, you can see that there's a number associated with each one of those projects. So it's really our tool in our ranking system to kind of work it through our system this way. Kind of jumping into this, using it as a tool and helping drive some of the conversation, highlighting one of the projects here, and I apologize, that blue's not really showing up very good, but this is a chamber roof rebuild. This is one of our capital projects that came back to, for an external bid. We're gonna take it out to a bid. We're putting the bid package together. It does have a lower ranking score. If you could see that, it's a 53 based on our criteria that we came up with. So when I say this is a tool, you can see that there's projects above it, right? And so there has been a lot of discussion internally, can we move that up? Absolutely, we can move that up. There's projects that we're gonna have to jump ahead of, and we can have that conversation now, right? It's not a matter of just do it. Well, it's gonna take precedence over the next ones above it. Where do we wanna put it in, right? Which one's the highest ranking? Where do we wanna spend our time and energy? So right now, this is one that will move up. We're about 90% completed with the big package. We're actually advancing it because a lot of the trying to get ahead of the monsoon season. There's some criteria that we wanted to move this one up. Oh, let's go back to that one. So another one that we wanted to talk about, it is kind of dynamic. There's been a couple projects here that have been kind of driven financially. There's the downtown Main Street Wi-Fi. It's a high ranking one. It's a 99 on our ranking system. This one we put on hold. It's in our up and coming, and the reason being is because we've gotten grant funding for it, but the grants haven't been released. So this is strategically, this one hasn't started. We're holding off on it financially until we can get some of the funds freed up on it. The other one that we highlighted here is this El Paso Park. I know it's been kind of a center for a lot of debate. There was decisions made around this. When we did the early engineering for this park, there was about 5,000 cubic yards of material that we needed to fill into the park. We also had a couple projects going concurrently with them that generated that same amount of material. So there's about $200,000 to $250,000 of cost savings by holding this off until we could generate that excess material to put in the park. And so we made the decision to hold back on this. Now that we've gotten Cholo out of there and we've generated a lot of that material, obviously this is going to jump to the highest priority because of the ranking system on there. Lastly, this is kind of dynamic. This is another project that we highlighted here is this 20th Avenue traffic signal. When we went through this project, this was designed externally and it was bidded externally. This is the one that we came back with no bids received. And so we had to get creative in what we did with it. And so it generated this loop on us, right? We had to bring this back to internally where we took it and made a separate bid package. It wound up splitting it. And this was the Maricopa IGA that we came back with so that we could secure the poles so that we could get bids. So it kind of grew in scope and it made another circle here for us to get it. We've just entered into contract today and gotten that bid and awarded. But this loop here was about a 5-month loop. And everybody asked why that was, right? And so when we look at that and trying to understand what goes into these bid, or at least within trying to get a project up and started, we have this design and engineering phase. And there's these rules of thumbs that come with it. Within the design sheet, you usually get these construction documents, right? And each one of those sheets that come in with those takes about 40 hours of engineering time to come up with, right? So when we send out blueprints for all of our design stuff, they range anywhere from about 6 to 50 sheets. So we're talking anywhere from about 6 weeks to 50 weeks worth of design work per project, depending on the complexity of that project. The one that's kind of the most misunderstood is this loop right here. This is the one that we talked about bringing it back to a bid and award phase. We'll break that down here in just a second of why that kind of takes maybe as long as it does to kind of show you some of that detail. Yeah.
I should have asked you back a while ago on the El Paso. Is it just fill dirt you're waiting for?
There was some fill dirts. We're also working with El Paso Natural Gas to try to get through the gas mains in there as well. We're still completing some of the fine tuning of the design. We've gotten a lot of the heavy lifting done, but there's some of the finer detail that we're putting into it. So, but primarily it was trying to get the contractors in and out of that area. So. Okay. I guess one last comment on that construction phase. There is this 50-50 rule that we kind of can use to estimate how long it's going to take for construction to be completed. That 50-50 is to say that 50% of your cost is going to be material, 50% of it's labor. There's some assumptions that you have to make with crew sizes and how long they're going to be working. But it's typically anywhere from about 16 weeks to 52 weeks on a given project. Now, when we start breaking down this bid and award phase, some of that five-month process and what takes a while, we do have this bid package. You guys probably heard reference to it before. This is that 180-page document that has a lot of our legal descriptions and everything in it. The creation of this bid package is anywhere from about 2 to 4 weeks for us to put that together. And then we have to do a mandatory advertisement. And it takes about 3 weeks. We have to give it at least a minimum of 2 weeks worth of publication in our newspaper and 1 week prior to get it to be published. So there's another 3 weeks there. It's typical that we give contractors anywhere from about 4 to 6 weeks worth for them to actually put their bid compositions and their bid pricings together. And then once we get those back, it usually takes about 3 weeks for us to get you guys the approval of the bid package itself, right? And then once we get the approval from you guys, there's still about 2 to 3 weeks worth of contract composition. This is actually putting all the legal documentation, getting all the signatures. And then there's also Bill, who actually does a legal review of the contract itself. So anywhere from 2 weeks on that to 3 weeks if we needed a wet signature. Typical, our grant and our grant applications require, we call them wet signatures, but it's got to be in ink, and they all have to be on there. They can't be sent email or anything else. So that's usually takes a little bit longer to get the wet signatures on stuff. So all of that summed up together is anywhere from 16 to 22 weeks or 4 to 5 months. So then this question came up. So we made a lot of changes. Is it actually making a difference, or where do we stand? So we went back and looked at these bid packages, and we have a bid opening report to kind of change your mind of thinking a little bit. This is from January to January. So we went back to 2018 to current, and because of this ranking system and kind of debottlenecking it and kind of focusing a lot of our resources on the higher priorities and working concurrently with everybody in the group, we're kind of on pace right now to probably be in that 15 bid package openings within this year. We do have the possibility to bring on probably 3 more. We have 3 more projects that we could bring on from this cooperative agreement. which we don't have to go through that bid package, big process. These are the cooperative, this is kind of what we brought to you guys before, but it has to do with, they've already been vetted, they've already done their price checks. It's a quicker system that we don't have to do all of that bid and awarding with. So we got 3 potential candidate projects that we'd like to probably bring in that area, which would bring us up to a total of like 18. So on average, we're only doing about 7.8 over the last 5 years. So a lot of these changes that we put in place has manifested into a lot of movement, a lot of good stuff happening in the CIP. This is kind of breaking down some of the financial side of it. On the bottom right-hand corner is looking at the monthly expenditures for capital and the CIP. Right now, projecting that out, we're looking at just a touch under about 7 million, and I think that's a conservative estimate. We got about $2 million right now pending on billing that hasn't cycled through, so that's a pretty conservative estimate. And we have a $20 million budget, so at the end of this, we're probably going to be in that $8 to $9, $10 million range. And then we do have some other highlights or notables that I put them up there. We have about $4.4 million in internal projects. We do have about $2 million in ones that have external delays. The biggest one of those being the Sanchez Road. This is the water line rehabilitation of the Sanchez Road. There's about a year-long environmental study that has to be completed with that. So we couldn't, until we get that done, there won't be a lot of design work on that one until we know how to get around a lot of the cultural sites that are in there. There's 2 of them that are identified. We do have about $2.3 million in deferred or canceled projects. This was a lot in that vetting of the CIP itself. So we did cancel out some of that $20 million. The left-hand one is breaking it out per area. You can see the funding source and how much we've actually spent in the different areas. So some of that general fund, that's where some of that comes out in that contingency that Rob was referring to earlier. Some of those projects that we've asked for extra money, you can see that we've slightly overexpended at least some of the forecasts and some of the general funding, and then kind of a breakdown in some of the other areas. So with that, like I said, you guys have access to that tool now. If you guys want to see where certain projects lie, where the ranking lies, where we're at, obviously you guys will have access to that. But if you guys got any other questions or feedback for this presentation, we'd love to have it.
You want the feedback on the presentation?
I'm not sure.
It was great.
Well, thank you. Yes, I do want it.
Anybody else have any comments or? Vice Mayor, if I could, before you adjourn, I just wanted to say this has been a long budget process, and it's been different. I think it challenged, this council in some ways because it's a conservative budget, and I just really wanted to say to you all sincerely thank you for supporting this budget. I think it's going to mean a lot to the employees. It's going to mean a lot to the community, and so again, I just wanted to say thank you.
Done?
I make the motion, we adjourn.
Motion second?
Second.
Yeah,
Are you second?
I'm doing it. Bye. Just go.